We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Marta Ojeda has been the executive director of the Tri-National Coalition for Justice in the Maquiladora since 1996. Originally from Nuevo, Laredo, Mexico, Marta worked for 20 years in the Free Trade Zone factories or maquiladoras while studying law in Monterrey, Mexico. Learning the law enabled her to defend the rights of her fellow workers, most of whom are women. Most importantly, it enabled her to empower workers to defend their own rights. In 1994, she led the Nuevo Laredo Sony movement, where more than 1,000 women workers held a wildcat strike trying to form an independent union to improve their working and living conditions. As director of CJM, Marta coordinates the Maquiladora Worker Empowerment Project, a popular education program that conducts workshops for Maquiladora workers on labor law, the constitutional wage, health and safety, reproductive rights, and fundraising with an emphasis on training the trainers. In 1997, Marta wrote a manual on the Mexican federal labor law, using popular language and graphics to educate workers about their rights and leadership development. These manuals have been an invaluable resource for worker education. Marta Ojeda has spoken at the United Nations and at several international gatherings. She has been one of the most outspoken voices in the women's forums at international gatherings, among them the People's Summit in Quebec in April 2001, the World Trade Organization protests in Seattle in November 1999, and the World Social Forum in Brazil in January 2002. She has been an invited speaker at numerous events focused on women, on the role of women in the labor movement, on women's strategies for social justice in a global economy, and on Latina leadership. In June 2001, Marta received the Petra Foundation Award for her work championing Mexican workers' rights to independent unions, fair wages, and safe working conditions in the face of corporate reprisals and government hostility. In 1999, Marta was named Troublemaker of the Year by Mother Jones magazine. Hello, I'm Jayati Lal, and I'm here today at the University of Michigan with Marta Ojeda. Thank you, Marta, for agreeing to participate in the Global Feminisms Project.
Thank you.
Welcome. So what I'm going to do today is basically talk to you about your life and work, and we'd love to hear about your history, the work that you've done with CJM, and have you sort of tell us how you see the future of both the women's movement and the labor movement. I'd like to start by asking you about your personal history. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, Mexico. That is the border with Laredo, Texas. And I grew up in my hometown, right there. And my heritage was to work in the maquilas. And that was the only life that I was having over there. So I thought that we were a teeny town on the map, and nothing else was beyond that.
You were telling me last night that your mother also worked in the maquiladoras. How did you come to work in the factories?
Well, more or less in the 65, the industrialization border program started on the border. Mexico and United States was having one program that was the Bracero program. And this Bracero program was from 1942 to 1964, was when all the Mexicans, men, were able to come and work in the United States. But they sent all these Mexicans back, and the agreement was over. So in order to stop the immigration, they started this industrialization border program in 1965. But really was in the beginning just exchange of machines, and they were exploring how can work this program. Was really in the 70s, 1970 was the inbound plant. That was when the Maquiladora's twin plant started from one side, one plant, and the other side, the other one. So therefore, we're called the Twin Plants Program. And my mom was the first generation. She started to work in the maquilas. And then I was trying to go to school, and I was in the middle school when the management was arriving to look for workers. Most of the labor force were women at that time. So I started to work with my mom, same company, and it was a huge company. We were doing TVs. Don't ask me what brand, because we were trying to understand what was all the pieces that we were working on, and cables and some electronic stuff, soldering. My mom was soldering. And then, so I think, I remember that I saw just GE. So now I know that was General Electric. But at that time was one department was doing pieces of TVs, and other department was doing Christmas lights and so on and so on. So we were working in the same company, same shift and everything. But suddenly, one time when we arrived, the company ran away, was closed, everything. They were not paying anything, including salaries, forget about our benefits and all those things. So then all the women were ordering the machines. That night I was with my mom and many women in front of the company, and complaining about the union, why this union were not doing anything in favor of the workers. So then we learned that the union was dealing with the company, and they were giving the opportunity to the company to take all the machines that we suppose were ordering right there. Was a lot of disappointment between us workers when find out that suppose the union has to help us, and they were agree with the company, and they took the machines, the only way that we can get our payment and everything. So that was the first image that I was having about union. I was angry, upset, I was not understanding, because I was having other ideas about union. 90% of us were women, or 95% of us were women, so we were in the street right there with no job, with anything, and was a big mobilization against this leaders, these charros leaders, unions who were in the CTM, the National Confederation of Workers, that was tied with the government, the PRI, and they were in the power for 70 years. So it was like a paralysis for the labor movement, because they were not allowing the workers to organize.
So how old were you when you first started to work?
I think I was between 13 and 14, more or less.
And when did you decide to go to law school, and how did that happen? Could you tell us about that?
Well, it was a long story, because after this work that was in Transitron, Mexicana, then I started to work in Johnson & Johnson. That was a garment company. And we were doing all the medical supplies. All the environment right there was blue. We were sewing these gowns and shoes covers and a mask and cuffs for all the doctors. And when we were asking to have some mask that was rejected because all the environment that was so blue, they were saying that it was not possible, because they were needing to deliver all the production and the same numbers that they were receiving. But also my supervisor was my union leader at the same time. And I was saying, no way, so you cannot represent workers and defend the company at the same time. The conditions were terrible, so we were not allowed to go to the restroom. So always I was facing her, the supervisor, saying, no way, so if you want to fire me, do it, but I'm not gonna be here. I need to go to the restroom. When we were having injuries, they were not allowed us to go to the health programs, social program that we have. And they were saying that no, the production, it should be first, and so and so. So we were having a lot of problems with her, that she was not representing workers, and the only thing that they were wanting was the production, and every day were more and more production growing. So I remember that my back was hurting me so much. When I was driving, was dark. When I was leaving, was dark. Always when we getting off of the transportation. We have to go across one field, so always were guys who were following us. Some compañeras were raped, so it was really hard. But also, all the level of exploitation was not just in the production, also our conditions as women, because for example, in Manhattan, men just were about 5 guys who were in the warehouse. The rest of the floor, we were women doing everything, packing, assembling, all the production there, and the operations. So then, the first thing is when we were needing to have this pregnancy test, and I was saying, why? No, you need to prove that you are not pregnant. I was saying, what's wrong to be pregnant, or what's wrong to be a mother? So why do we have to have this pregnancy test? But with our law, it's really progressive, and we have maternity leave. It's 45 days before and 45 days after of the delivery time. So then, therefore, first, that was the thing that they were trying to avoid, and second, that we do not produce if you are pregnant. And our law, you have to have light work and don't get these hard things and be on pressure and so and so. So in order to avoid all those things, so we need to go through the pregnancy test, and were many, many things. But the major issue was the salary. Was not enough. The quote was now thousands, and we were making the same amount, and they were asking for more. So we were asking for better salaries, better conditions, the environment. Your eyes were blue, your nose was blue, your mouth was blue. And also, what is one department that was to cut all the material. So mm-hmm. There was a pattern that you have to be cutting all the mm-hmm. gown and everything, and right there was no any protection. It's like I remember I was so short, was a table, was so high, and you were having the electrical, so it was a moment that you were like
were doing
this.
The cutting.
Yeah.
Oh
so the cutting all the material, and was so strong, and was not any kind of protection of any way. Were many injuries, many accidents. So we were saying, hey, someone can be killed, can be dead. You can right now you are losing a finger or a hand, but then you can lose your life. On the beginning, that was the concern, the salary, health conditions that we were having, and we were not paying so much attention to the discrimination at the beginning. The beginning was really concerned salaries and working conditions. So it was when I decided to face the company and, of course, the union, because we were unionized there. And my fellow workers were saying, if you talk, you're going to be fired. And we were saying, so we cannot live like this, so it should be better condition. Was when we faced the union leader, and we were asking to change care, that we don't want that the supervisor, we are our representative, and we want one of the workers be representing the company in order to get more benefits and so and so. And that time was when the workers chose me to be the representative in the union. So then realized, so now what? Now in this union that I'm hate, mm-hmm. and what supposed do I have to do? But if I don't want that happen the same thing that happened in Transitron, that they don't pay anything, just run away, and the union was not representing and defending workers, so then we have to do something, but I don't know. And I was afraid, we were afraid, because we say, what about, they have a beautiful rhetoric. They really convince everyone to stay to work overtime when it's illegal when they do mandatory the overtime. So, and we were trying to find a way how we can really get the benefits for all of us and not just for the company. So it was when we say we need to learn about the labor law. We need to learn about our rights in order to defend ourselves. And I thought that the only way to learn the labor law was going to the law school. But I was not having any penny, and it was mm-hmm. impossible. Mm-hmm. So then was when all our compañeras, so we decided that one way can be try to do a collective way, and And every Friday, so they start to save some money in order that I can finish the law school. So first I was going to Saltillo, Coahuila, that was 5 hours from the border. So I was working on the maquila during the day. I was trying to do my homework and reading during the nights. I was going to school in the weekends, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or so and so, try to make my classes. And then when we learned that in Monterrey was the other one, so I moved from Saltillo to Monterrey, and I was able to keep going to the school, to the law school, and learn about the law in order to be negotiating with the company and get more benefits for the workers. When I was in the law school, I was really focused on the labor law. I learned about the criminal, civil, and so, but my biggest interest and priority was the labor law in order to understand why companies always were getting the major benefits for everything. And if we, the workers, were the ones who were working so hard for that. So afterwards, so we were able to improve a little bit our conditions, but when we learn and when I start to demand the contract and benefits, was the first time that I hear about competitive. They were telling me that they cannot give us more salary because they were needing to be competitive with Procter & Gamble. Mm-hmm. And they were needing, if we insist and ask and benefits, they will shoot it down. And they did. So Manhattan shut down, and they moved to Ciudad Juarez. They were saying in Ciudad Juarez, no unions, no culture of union, anything. So it's a paradise, so let's move there. It's more cheaper, so they were moving to Ciudad Juarez. So then arrived Sony, and I started to work in Sony.
Oh, well, that leads into my next question, because I was going to ask about the Sony case. But how long did it take you, just to finish that, how long did it take you to finish law school, going to law school the way that you did, at nights and on weekends?
About six years.
My goodness.
More or less.
So you were able to finish that while you were still working in Manhattan, the law degree?
Yes. Yes. No, I finished in Sony.
So how did you move from Manhattan to Sony? That's when left?
When Manhattan ran away, and this was a big difference, and we really proved it, because when I was attending the law school and we learned our benefits, and they say no benefits, we're going to shoot down, we need to be competitive, and so. Then we were able to make them respect the law, and they pay the severance payment to everyone, and 1 extra month of salaries for everyone when they were moving to Ciudad Juarez. So therefore, at least in that time, we have, okay, so now we enforce our law. We were able to get this severance payment for everyone. And then in 1979 was when Sony arrived, and they started with 25 workers. And on the beginning was the manual audio assembling from audio cassette. But then by 82, when was the first peso devaluation, the biggest peso devaluation, was when all these products were arriving, the VHAs, and then beta VHS, and then floppy disk, and all these products were growing. And by that time, we became 7 plants with 2,000 workers.
So could you tell us a bit about the Sony case and how it developed, and what the strike was about and the outcome of the strike? Because that was a very signal event in using NAFTA labor law through the NAO.
Well, yeah.
So what was the strike about, and how long did it last? Because it was something that was in the papers a lot, and...
Well, basically, the thing is that I think that was the symbol of what really was meaning this free trade and labor and gender, because all of us, we were women, the majority of the labor force, but also was all this exploitation, because Sony was having a really good facility, and everybody can say, wow, it was really good building, and they are having really good conditions, but was the same. The production was the same, the exploitation was the same, the salary was not enough. And also in the 80s was when it started these children with birth defects. I was in printing department, when was the first children with the brain open, so no hair and just the brain there. And when I was there, my comadre Mari, suppose she was asking me to be the godmother. Everybody was happy. And when the children was born like that, we were asking, so what's wrong? If something was wrong in the work or why. And they were saying that was a genetic problem because between them or because my compadre was alcoholic and therefore the kid was born like that. But when we were in that machine that was painting automatic, because it was long transformation from manual to semi-automatic onto automatic, and all the models were changing and the production. Every time they were more sophisticated to produce, looking the way that we can produce more and trying to get the same amount of production with less workers. But we always were making the same money, and the agreement with the government to increase salaries was almost nothing. And we were watching how all this environment, at least myself, how strong was to be from the sunrise to the sunset and that war of noise, assembling line, 4 walls. And on the beginning, I remember I thought that I was angry against my supervisor. I was angry about the manager, and I thought that they were the enemies because that was the thing that I was having right there in front of me, exploiting me and asking me more production, and you cannot do this, and like we were slaves. But then after that, after a year and after from electronic to garment to electronic again and all those things, so we were thinking how really can organize the union. They were not really representing workers. They were saying, do not disturb the company because they are giving you jobs, so forget about it. But also because most of us were women, so they were harassing the workers. And we were disappointed with them. Our law is really progressive, and they say that we have the right to have a profit sharing. So the company has to pay 10% of the profit sharing. But the companies were saying, we are not making profit here because it's for export. So for us, it was really weird. If you are working in a Mexican company or in a grocery store, in a gas station, whatever that will be Mexican, you will receive whatever that will be one extra amount of your salary every year because of that 10% of profits. And the maquilas, they were refusing to do it. They were saying, no, we're not making profit, but they were growing and growing, and other plan, another plan, another plan. And I was saying, if you're not making profit, why are all these buildings? So 7 plants and all those things. So we were facing in the union, so forget it, they were not doing anything.
So it was CTM there?
That was the CTM. So Tamaulipas, the place where I was born, was really strong, the CTM. Well, first wasn't the whole country, okay? They were in the power for 70 years. And therefore we decided that we really need to do something. And when we learned that suppose NAFTA was passed, and they tell us that now we will be working all around the clock because they cannot stop the machines. And we are going to be working Saturday and Sundays and so. The overtime, according with our law, is not mandatory. So they were saying enough. So we were saying enough. It's enough. So all these children with birth defects, all this exploitation and the code, the salary is the same. So we say, no, we want to organize a union. And was when I went to Mexico City, I traveled and I faced the national leader of the CTM, like Sweeney, and that time was Fidel Velázquez. And I told him that I want to enforce our law. They give us the right to organize, and we want to form our union. And he told me that if I will do that, was October 1993, I will lit fire. Well, okay, so we were ready. So I don't think that will be worse than the situation that we're living. So we returned to Mexico. I'm telling you, about 24 hours distance that we were traveling. We were doing activities and raising money, fundraising in order to paid a bus to travel over there and talk with him and return. And when we returned, we start to organize all the maquilas.
Not just Sony.
Not just Sony. We start to organize all the maquilas. And in order to have election against this CTM Secretary General, that he was just looking for political position. He was in the Congress, he was a senator, he was in Mexico City, he was in the state, he was in all the political position. And workers were by themselves, so we decided to organize all the maquilas and try to win elections. So then I went to the capital of the state when I learned that the national leader was visiting in January 12. So I was demanding that I wanted a public debate with the leader of the CTM, demanding the right to organize. And because I did in front of the media, so they were not having any choice, so we have this debate, and unfortunately, with all the things that I learned and I live, so we won the debate, and we won in public the decision that we will have elections, supposed democratic election. So we were so happy, we returned, and we were organizing and getting ready when they sent these people of Congress from the PRI to be the one to do the elections of the CTM. Please tell me who is going to be the election, one people of Congress. He was sending this representative of them to do the election. The election that they did, they were saying just in this side, those who wants the CTM, and this side, those who wants the independent union. So those who were in that side, that was 100%, then they say, anyway, the CTM won. So we took the streets and we say, no, wait, we are not gonna work until we have democratic election. Was not any election, any ballot, anything, even if 100% was opposed, so no way. So in Sony was when really we were taking the streets, we were blocking the bridge, calling attention because the mayor, when we were with the mayor, they were saying that the mayor was not in town, but when we were blocking downtown and bridge, immediately the mayor appeared, he was there, and then he was saying, you need to return to work, and I will call the national leader and I will ask him for election, and I say, okay, we will return, but we are not gonna be working. So we returned to the plant because we were marching all the cities and everything, and all the people was joining us, and we were for 1 week. And for us was great because we were involving all the community. That week that we were in Planton, that was a demonstration, permanent demonstration, 24 hours a day, 2,000 workers there. The first day, the mayor, instead of called the national leader, or probably they did, but they agree what they will do. So he sent the fire workers, and the first thing that they did was giving a shower all the teenagers, women working there, trying to break our strike. The second day, they were sending all the big trailers because we were having a change on the gates and don't left the trucks to take inside or outside production. No way, so this is closed, the plant. So then they were trying to roll over against the workers, but no one's moved from there. No one's moved from there. So then they thought that, oh, if we chase the truck, they will break and we will enter. But no one said, you want to kill us, we're ready. So the third day, they sent the police to arrest me because Sony was presenting a complaint against me saying that they were losing millions of dollars of production with all the plants closed in those days. And but at that time, all the workers were and said, no, all of us are leaders. It's not just Marta. If you want to arrest one, you have to arrest everyone because all of us were there. And then the police were trying to put one against other. They were asking to Fela, you have to confess. Because Lupe said that Marta is the leader. And Fela said, I don't know why she said that, because all of us were here, you have to arrest me. And Lupe, Fela already confessed. Lupe, I don't know why Fela said that. So it's not true, all of us were here. So then were all the women there saying we're ready to be in jail with the kids and everything. So and so they released me. And we were there. We were doing committees, so many women were asking support with the community. Then the community started to respond, bringing coffee, blankets, food, medicines for those who were fainting, and because even many of them were pregnant.
So you were doing a
in
hunger
the street.
strike?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Hunger
How many
strike.
participated in the hunger strike?
We were almost all the workers, more than
Wow.
1,000 workers that we were there. But then on Thursday, they sent the police, and they really beat the workers. And we were in commissions, we were talking in the radio, because the CTM and the company were giving a wrong image about the movement. So we were visiting the workers from the other companies, and then when the police arrived, they start to beat the workers and arrest many of them, but many of them were in the hospital. So when that happened, I was lucky that at least one of the guys, the reporter of the newspaper, they were with us, and he was wearing a cap like he was in the warehouse of Sony. So he was able to take pictures and video exactly in the moment of the repression. And then the media arrived and everything, so it was a big, was the first repression like that happened against the workers in my town. And the only crime was that we were asking for better conditions, for a salary, for our union. So then we were to the media and said, what is our crime? To organize, to have a unions? If suppose it's in our law, what is wrong here? So then the next day, on Friday, all the workers for all the maquilas were joining us in the strike. So then the 2,000 became 10,000 workers.
God.
So when all the workers were there, and there is a video, beautiful video, that workers were arriving with signs saying, workers from Bolsas, the Laredo is with Sony, workers from Del Redo, workers from Rin, we are supporting Sony workers. So all the workers start to arrive, and by Saturday was when the governor said that I was stabilizing the Maquiladora industry. And they sent like soldiers for all those towns, and by 5 in the morning, everybody was sleeping in the street, all the women's, and they at the parking lot, and they arrive and they start to hit the women's with the machine guns and arresting them and breaking our strike. So in that time, 3 workers, that was Celia, Lily, and Victor, they went and I was in the backside, they pushed me in a car and I say, you have to run. I say, why? You have to run. And when they were driving me, they passed just fast, and we saw all the trucks like they were in war, something like that. All the soldiers and beating the women. And I say, why? Why they need machine guns and all these weapons just to break down our strike, and what we did wrong? So then they crossed me the border, and when I was there, it was early morning, I was in the main plaza, and I was trying to find out what we did wrong, why the police, the governor, is there to defend us, is there to enforce our law. We're supporting the company. Even there is a video where you can see the police coming from inside the company to outside, and the women are like this and beating from the back. And was really brutal. And when I was watching the video one time, another time, and I was getting angry and angry, I was saying, how is it possible that our government is doing this? So in the beginning, I thought that my enemy just was the supervisor or the manager. But then I learned about the system and how all the system of my country was really tied with this capital, with this free trade agreement. So for us in 1994, when we learned that the Zapatistas were rising up, and we were rising up just 3 months after, really it was something beyond, that has to go beyond the 4 walls of exploitation, beyond of 4 walls of starving, beyond your own country. In that time, I thought that everything was over. And when the union delegate and the government was saying that don't pay attention to Marta because she's crazy and you're going to be in troubles, and to fight for justice was a disease for them. And when I crossed and I was here, I said, so now what? What's next? Nothing. How are we going to survive here? and one country that I don't know absolutely anything, language, culture, anything, what am I going to do? I don't want to be living here. I want to go back and be in my country and keep fighting back. So when I saw my compañeros and compañeras crossing the bridge, all of them, and say, so encouraged for all the things that were happening, and say, now we need to keep fighting. Now we need to make that they really pay for all this. Now we need to go beyond this, and we need to find a way to make them responsible for this. Right there on the streets, we were having meetings, just crossing the bridge, no infrastructure, no anything, but every day we were meeting and trying to strategize what we can do. Was when my fellow workers was telling me about, it was one reporter who was looking for me, and he was trying to interview me to learn about the struggle. And I thought that was from the CIA. And I say, no way, I don't want anything for any American, any gringo, no way. I don't want to give an interview to no one. But he was insistent, he was so persistent, so finally I accept. And he got all the story, testimonies, workers, a month after I met with him. And he was telling me about all these groups and the Coalition for Justice and the Maquiladoras, that it was possible to present this international complaint under NAFTA. For us was hope. For us was a teeny light that probably we can make this corporation responsible. Because next day it was on the first page of the newspaper, a letter from the company thanking to the government. Thank you, Governor, because you really bring the peace to the company. Now we are working and everything is nice and whatever. And for look, Marta. So the Secretary General of the CTM, he was in charge of the police department. So therefore, all the police was looking for me. The governor was looking for me. So I said, why? So what's wrong? And then when I was meeting with organizations from the Coalition for Justice and the Maquiladoras, was when I learned about solidarity, because they were crazy like me. They were believing in social justice. They were fighting for something, and was really want to start this cross-border organizing. Many organizations were joining together, the International Labor Rights Fund, trying to present this research and everything, and the international law, the democratic lawyers from Mexico City, and so many groups start to come together and try to help and present this complaint against Sony. We spent 2 years, and during those 2 years, so I was sending letters to the Mexican government demanding to return to my country, asking what I did wrong, if in my constitution is the right to speech, the right to freedom of association, if my labor right is the right to organize, so what was wrong, I want to return, and so on and so on. So 3 times they were responding. First time they were saying, okay, it's not any crime against Marta Ojeda Rodriguez. And I say, no way, I am Marta Ojeda Dominguez. So they are changing my last name. So I reply and I say, it's wrong, this last name, so please look in your record. Then they reply 6 months after or a year after, there is not any crime against Marta Ojeda Hernandez. And always they were changing my last name. And I say it's obvious that they are blocking this. Then I was writing to Mexico City, to the Human Rights Department, and they answer and they say that the labor rights does not belong to the human rights. So therefore, so I was knocking in the wrong door, and they cannot do anything. So I spent 2 years. I spent 2 years trying to return my country. Meantime, the lawyer of St. Mary University, Monica Sherman, she was helping me right here with all the immigration issues and everything. And meantime, I was looking for a job, so I started to work in Coca-Cola, right here in the United States. I went to one company, and I started to work, and it was weird for me because, oh yeah, it was better condition, sure, the building and everything. But it was really weird to me that when they were giving salaries, they were paying more the white people, they were paying more men. And all those who were Afro-Americans or Latinos, so they started to call me Latina. And I say, my name is Marta. No, so she's Latina, come on here. So then I was not speaking English. I was trying to understand what it's about. And when they were translating, you get 5 cents increased salary, and they got 25 cents. And I said, why? You were doing the same. And even I producing more than him, why he's making more than me? So for me it was weird because in Mexico, we were having the minimum wage and other systems. So it was the first thing that I started to find out weird here. But the second thing was that they start to close some departments here and moving to USA, even to Piedras Negras. And then those that they were closing here was all those that they were using chemicals and whatever. And I asked them why they were moving those lines. Oh, it's because these lines we are soldering with lead and we are moving over there. And I say, so what? The other side of the river, the lead is not poisoning anyone or what? They were saying, oh no, so we can give them a glass of milk to the workers and that is not gonna be any problem. All right, okay, and why not here? So I was trying to compare what was going on and what was happening right there. So I was finding many things during this year. I was working here. We were following this trail. Many people was asking me to share my experience. So it was the first time when were the 3 hearings, one in Mexico, one in the United States, and one in Canada. So when I have to testify in all those hearings, it was a challenge because when was the hearing in Mexico, the fellow workers were saying, if you go over there, you're going to be arrested. And I say, if I don't go, the case is going to be over.
This is for the Sony case.
For the Sony case. So then what we can do? So the case take 2 years. During 2 years, I started to work in this place, and I was organizing anyway at the same time, the weekends and everything, the evenings. So then we decided that I have to go to the Sony case. So I went to Mexico, and when I arrived to Mexico City, was the first time that I found many people from my own country who learned about us, because Mexico is so far, so big. So the hearing was in the capital of the state. The problem happened in the border with the United States. So I found many people from my own country that they knew about our case. They were waiting for me. They were watering me, protecting me. That was really amazing. I feel that we were not alone in our own country. We really give the evidence, and the Mexican panel were in the corner. They were lost. It was really the proof of all this violation. Even one of the guys of the writers of NAFTA that he was testifying, and the Mexican side say, okay, it was some violations, but nobody wants to be sitting here in this chair and feeling as guilty, so think about the sovereignty. So then they forget labor rights, and they start to talk about sovereignty of the countries, what is possible, what cannot possible, ta-da-da. So after 2 years, they just recommend Mexico to respect the labor rights. We say, shit. So we were waiting more than 2 years for this? So if this was the side agreement that suppose will guarantee that the labor rights be respected, forget it. So does not have any enforcement, does not have anything. So we felt that we were wasting our time over there. We felt really deception, because we believe we were having one hope, that probably Mexico will have other elections with us, will be responsible, and not just recommend in the future. Now, in this case, the workers, hundreds of workers were fired, 100 of them were fired, not just 1 or 2. And they were replaced like anything. So the company was with all the impunity, and Mexican government just respect the labor rights and buy. And the workers and the families and the repression and all those, what? What is just throw away like nothing happened and change the history? So what is this? So for us, what's really a big deception and that way. So then was in 1996, that was the last hearing, March 1st of 1996, when the Canadian panel, they were having the last meeting, and they were saying, okay, So at this case, the Canadian guy said, suppose I have to talk for whatever, anytime. But for me, it's obvious that it's not going to be any change. So at least I want to give my word to the workers, and they have the last word. And it was when I gave a speech telling them all our frustration, our anger, and how this mechanism really doesn't work for labor rights. So after that, the Coalition for Justice was offering me this position, and so in the beginning it was really hard for me because I said, I don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what is one NGO. The only word that I know is workers, unions,
Can
companies.
I just go back for a second? You've really already described really well how the focus of your activism shifted based on, when you were a worker and from shop floor specific agitations to more of a sort of global focus and trying, because of NAFTA, with the labor side agreements. So before we go into more CJM, just so we understand, what is the Coalition for Justice of Maquiladoras? How is it different from a union that's usually tied to, an industry or sometimes an enterprise? And so what is special or different about the approach for CJM? You've been working with CJM now since 1994. So,
No, well,
yeah.
1994 I was a worker and I was involved in this, but officially I started to work with them, I think 1996 or 97, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, first I met them as organization and as supporting them. They were having one meeting and they invited me. And when I was there, I met a lot of people, religious groups, women, unions, grassroots, many people from United States and from Canada. And they were really committed to help the workers in Mexico when was happening all these things. So for me, it was really interesting how this organization was different of the world that I was learning, the traditional union and this vertical leadership that they were used to have. So that was the thing that we were trying to switch in our union to be collective leadership and all those things. So when I arrived to this organization and I found these collective groups that they were trying to work together and trying to put all their talents and efforts and try to mobilize, educate, and do something, was when I started to learn about them. In 1989, when NAFTA debates start with Canada and United States, so it's true that in the beginning the unions were concerned about they're going to be losing jobs and all those things. But basically, the religious groups were the driving force in the Coalition for Justice and the Maquiladoras. They were knocking the door, and all the social sectors, and trying to form some alliance and try to do something. When they learned that Mexico will be included in 1990 in the negotiations of NAFTA, was when they were really focusing on one environmental campaign. And one video was produced that was Stepan Chemical, the poison of one Mexican community. And it was really the true story about how these corporations were killing my people, polluting the environment and everything. So it was a big campaign. Many people of Congress went and they were learning that this free trade really was open to pollute the environment 100%, deregulate the law, to not respect the law, and all those things. That was the fair issues that were raised up. And the Coalition for Justice, when NAFTA was passed, they say, so okay, so now first was try to bring everyone right here to have a debate, to give arguments, to bring people from all the social sector and be opposed to this, but now it's passed, so now what we can do? So then was when they really formed this social platform that is the Coalition for Justice and the Maquiladoras, bringing together organizations. On the beginning, as I told you, was just people from the United States. So then when I started to work with them, that was the thing that I was saying, okay, this right now is a coalition, it's an alliance with many organizations trying to help in Mexico, but where are the Mexicans? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mexicans, they should be also here, and was when everybody started to think trinational label in order to form this platform against the NAFTA. So they passed a resolution that 50% of the board it should be Mexican organizations, and from those 15, at least 8 it should be from Maquiladora workers' leadership. So that was the way that in the board is reflected all the social sector from United States, Mexico, and Canada, with all the visions, try to be everyone in the table and try to work together to face this model.
Could you tell me a little bit about how the relationship between academic scholarship and activism works in CJM as a coalition? What is the role that you see for academics and research?
I think that it's all this year we are celebrating 15th anniversary of the Coalition for Justice, and probably I can have half of those years with them. But I think there has been a long process of learning each other, and when you are with really in the table trying to work together with all your vision with common goals, is when you try to find a way, develop some strategies, tactics, whatever. And we thought that the academic relationship was beyond the university, beyond the school, that it should be an interaction between the field, the university, the research, how your potential research can be helping not just to the academic level or other people, also how can be used for the workers. So we were been doing different research and different ways that is been interacting. For example, the research of the Purchasing Power Index, that was Ruth Rosenberg. She went down there. She was in 15 series, but all those series was the workers involved. The workers were the ones who were taking the prices, taking the pay stubs, taking everything, bringing all together, giving their view, giving their vision. So right there you see, and her research, you see not just the pictures or not just the numbers. Also, you can see how really the workers' vision was involved. And the last thing that we do is, for example, UUP Union, the Universal Profession Union Workers from New York State. They developed these ties with the Duro workers, and they build the center with the Duro workers that the workers can keep organized. And everything just was born when one academic was attending the union election, and they saw the guns, the repression, how the leaders were chasing. They saw that was so strong, and after that they were committed and bringing all this union together and tried to work in the field. They were doing research there, and they start this common project and trying to work together.
Very briefly, because I want to also move on to issues of feminism and get you to reflect on that. Another point of intersection is also codes of conduct, right? Could you explain some of the work that CJM does around the codes of conduct that are being primarily instigated and instituted through the universities?
Well, and the code of conduct, as I was saying yesterday, for me, it's a tool, but it's not the solution or the only solution that can be resolved all the problems here. I think that is just one tactic. I think that for us it's been really hard. We have been having many experience with Philips, with Hallmark, with Gap, with Alcoa. All the corporations have code of conducts, and they looks beautiful on paper. They looks beautiful in the world. And the world that they have, because Alcoa, they have in the whole world the beautiful code of conducts, and they have 100 of awards and ISO 9000 and ISO here and ISO there, and they are the best in the world, and they have a beautiful rhetoric everywhere. But unfortunately, at this, most of them, for example, they have the right to organize, but at this time, the company has been able to have or to allow the workers to have their own independent union. For example, Hallmark, they have sexual harassment, and the big case of Duro was strong and the right to organize and sexual harassment, and they were saying that they will be sending someone of them, and I was asking them how you're going to be doing the monitoring, how it's going to be independent, how it's going to be translating the workers, how you're going to be management. At the end was the management who translate, what the management who choose the workers. So at the end, just Hallmark find out that just some chairs were broken or
Right.
were not superficial things, but not those things that go beyond this. I know that all of the corporations here in the code of conduct, the right to organize, but it's so easy. I just want to know one, and these 10 years that when all the workers are being organizing, if these companies have their code of conduct, why they don't enforce them? Does not have any mechanisms of enforcement. And even if you send one independent monitoring, so I just want to be careful, because in our law is so strong. Our law describes what is a living wage. Our Constitution, what is a living wage? What is the right to organize? It's right there. And if I want to bring the code of conduct, you are asking me to replace the law with the code of conduct. You are asking me to replace the workers with the code of conduct. And it's going to be independent monitoring. Where are the workers in that picture? Are the workers involved? Are the workers participating? You know, the same when it's one independent monitoring, even for the same community, but it's one human rights organization, what is not in contact with the workers, they can have really beautiful, good intention. They can be the best priests of the world. They can be the best people on the world. But if they don't know the exploitation in the assembly line, if they don't bring the workers right here on table and ask them what they want and how we can work together, how this code of conduct can help them, and what is their priority. We can think that it can be one thing of the living wage or the restroom or the dinner room or whatever, but what is their priority and what they want to fight for and how we can work together. So I think that it should be coordinated with the field, with the workers. I've been feeling many chairs, for example, it was a union from Central America that they were saying, they were complaining and they were saying this code of conduct are replacing the level of the union. Right now, we have the union, but the company does not want to negotiate with us because they want to negotiate with this committee that is doing the independent union, the independent monitoring. So what about those? So I've been listening workers' concern about this, about how really it's been replacing this. I think that it should be another way. I think that it should be including workers, asking them. It should be in a coordinated. It's a tool. Right. It's a tool as the shareholder, as all this, but all of these tools, it should be empowered of workers, and the workers has the one who has to drive that force.
Thank you. I'm going to shift focus a bit now and ask you to reflect a little bit about feminism and its importance in your work or relevance to your work, if at all. I just want to start off by asking you, how do you understand the term feminism, and what does it mean to you and in your work?
Well, I think it's not easy question. It's not easy question because now that I've been so lucky having all this opportunity to be traveling and learning, I was finding how some women understand feminism. And when I've been learning that some of them is try to fight for women's rights, or is try to improve the social condition between women and rights, or all those things, I've been a little bit concerned because with us or the way that we were living and the border is different. It's about, for us, it's like how is the labor force and what is the role of the women, how the capital with all these flows coming here is being really labeling the women, gender issues, and the labor force, and how is this division, is the system who really put these stereotypes and transfer to labors. And that's the way that we are trying to teach the workers in a way in this gender and the global economy workshops, in order that they understand that these stereotypes or whatever is not one war between men and women, is frame it in the system, frame it in the capital, and how it's transferred the divisions of labor. So if it's in that way, yes, I do, because I'm working with the women, but if it's in the way that try to just lead the women's like the only ones who are suffering this, are suffering more, but I think it's not in that way. It's not an issue that women's against men's or whatever. It's just in framing and labor and capital and how we are producing all these goods that we are not able to really afford it, and why we are paying or more exploiting than them. So it should be in that frame.
So would you call yourself a feminist?
If it's framing like this, yes.
Okay.
If it's in the other way, no.
Okay. Now, almost 70% of Maquila workers are women, and much of your work also in these workshops, as you've talked about, focuses on training about sexual harassment and employer sexual discrimination. You've talked about pregnancy tests, the forcible use of contraceptives in factories. How does CJM attend to these issues? And would you characterize CJM as a feminist organization or umbrella group?
Well, if it's an issue that you cannot separate gender of this frame, because it's not separate, it's tied in this context, I think that we are, because we are focused in this struggle. We are focused and empower women in that way, but in the frame of labor. And even in our constituency, for example, in our board, 15% are women, and our executive committee are women. So the executive director is women. Most of the groups on the board are women. So we cannot deny that gender is really important factor in the context of labor.
And you let these issues come up organically from what the workers want? So sexual orientation or harassment,
sure.
if the workers bring them up, what sort of issues tend to come up?
Sure.
That they want?
The way that we work is that we have 1 hour meeting, annual meeting once a year. And that meeting, we try to analyze all the challenges that we have, political challenge with free trade, whatever, since the top to the bottom. And everyone's breakdown and roundtable discussions by sector, by region, by whatever, and then come up with the work plan. And that's the way that we identify what is the priorities for the workers, where they want to be doing focus on the training. And when they say, we want gender, we don't know what is gender, so we want to learn how is gender. Okay, so gender in the global economy, that is one of the things. I was surprised just last year, after 10 years of NAFTA, just last year, and the work plan show up like all our workshops is focused on sexual harassment and sexual discrimination and gender, but what about sexual identity? So we are not having any workshop in sexual identity, and we don't know anything. So now also are gays and lesbians in the maquilas, and nobody talk about them. So just until last year. So right now it's one of their priorities that they are asking for, that they are identified in, and we always are trying to respect the rhythms. So the workers are asking the time and the issues that they want.
Could you talk about issues of culture and race? Because one of the difficulties of CJM is not only are you a tri-national organization, you're across industry, you cross over gender lines, you cross over race lines. How does that impact the actual work of CJM or hinder it? You talked about an example of the Roberts Rules, which I think was really interesting. But can you talk about race and culture and how it might pose special difficulties in the work that you do?
Sure, it's not been easy. It's not been easy because, as I told you, in the beginning was first just focus on debate, then was focus on target some corporations. In 2000, and it's been growing and it's been switching the focus, the work that we want to do according with the political context that is appearing. But also it's a lot of challenge and language and culture and strategies and everything. So therefore we are trying to put all together one integral work, map, action plan, whatever you want to call. As I told you, it's not been easy. Some ones were having experience from the top to the bottom leaderships. Now the leadership that we want to build is a collective that we have been building. We became a coalition of organizations, not just individuals, and try to be more collective, not just a corporation. And one of the challenges of cultures that we were having was when we start the meetings, for example, the people in the United States, they were saying, okay, so let's start the meeting, okay, so proposal, second motion, whatever, it's approved. And all the workers that they are on the table, that they are on the leadership, and also the Mexicans were saying they are talking about, we don't know, so okay, so let's see what it's about. And okay, second motion approved. And they say, what is that? Well, we are in the meeting, so we are in the Robert Rules, and we can teach you. Okay, right here is all the system, right here is all the book. This is the Robert Rules that all the meetings has to be processed. They say, we don't know Robert, okay? And we don't want Robert. Robert can stay in home. So right here we are 3 cultures. So let's develop one system that will be according with all these 3 cultures, and we can work together. So when you give up to all your process, your system about the Robert rules, okay, so let's do it. Let's put it at the table and let's start. And it's when you start to define, okay, if you want to build something different, so you have to start on a common ground all together with a different vision. And you start from zeros. Taking the best things from the lesson that you have been taking, of course, no? But moving in a different vision. And that was the way that you start to construct the goals in short and medium and long term. So now building power on the workers is one of the key things, because that's the way that you are going to be building the social movement, empowering the workers. That is the long-term goal. When you can have short and medium term certain campaigns or whatever, but really what is the driving force for the organization is not just to improve day-by-day salary or to improve day-by-day standard of living. What really is the meaning going to a social movement?
So in effect, actually, it's not only impacted the focus and the issues that you focus on, but also the day-to-day operations and the way in which you deal with each other and the way in which you have your meetings as well. It's interesting. I wanted to ask you if you could speak to what relationship, if any, CJM has, because it's an umbrella organization that has 250 member organizations, what intersection is there with the women's movement? So for example, are there any specifically feminist organizations that are members of CJM? And if so, could you give us some examples of these?
Well, there are women organizations in Mexico, that is the Maquiladora workers, also in South Mexico, that is Red de Mujeres Sindicalistas, that's Women Unions Network. And that is great, because that's the way that we want to really move from gender, union, and labor, all this work that we do. We are trying to make links between North, South. We are been working with Hemispheric Social Alliance, Women's, the Hemispheric label. In the United States, we are being in contact with the Women Coalition that is based in San Antonio, Texas, in Washington, D.C., when they need some research or something about the impact of women and so and so. And more or less that's the work that we do.
Can you tell me a little bit about the work that CGM has done and how you've participated in activism around the murders of women maquiladora workers in Ciudad Juarez? Because that's been another point, sort of a flashpoint, where the issue of gender has sort of erupted in a way that it can't be ignored, right, among the maquiladora workers and labor groups that work on the border area.
That has been a really huge and big issue. And that is my concern. I've been having some debates that some people try to label it just a femicide, and it's just women's, and trying to ignore what is the role of capital and industrialization is playing here, because many of them are from maquiladoras, and corporations are not doing anything, and so and so. And there have been many years, 10 years, that all these murders have been happening, and we are been working in many ways with many organizations. It's not, I will not say that is one job that some organization has been doing. I think that with the pass of the years, some organizations arriving, other ones trying to enforce, other ones just arrive, take the picture and buy. So it's been an issue that many people has been involved. The only thing that I can tell you is that it's just through the women's work that are being doing in the local area with the relatives that they are being really so brave, try to face this, that was possible that we can open this to the international label. And if you can see, just an international label can have all the attention. The United Nations was there, International Human Rights Committee was there, so International Amnesty was there, so everybody was there. Everybody has been showing up, the impunity, the actors who are being involved, and unfortunately at this time the government is not going to be accountable in any way, and corporations either, even if many of them are being dying like that. So we are being supporting in many ways. This was one organization that is Nuestras Hijas de Regreso a Casa, Our Daughters Come Home, that they were members of CAM, and we were doing a lot of work. And the last meeting that we have in Torreon, Coahuila, we did a big march, and we find out that many people from the community, from the Coahuila, were emigrating, and some of their daughters were in the list of those disappeared or dead. And we are been mobilizing, and we have been announcing, bringing them here, trying to raise awareness. Well, we have been doing many things, and making pressure on the government, doing all this march against violence against women. So we have been doing many ways.
So you've already mentioned in this context that you have links with other international groups, and I want to talk a little bit more about your global alliances that you forge. Obviously, CGM is sort of already internationalist in its constitution as a trinational organization, but what do you do to foster the relationship of border women workers to workers in other parts of the world outside the Americas?
We are trying to develop links at global level because it's the only way that we will face this model. They talk about global economy, so we need to go beyond borders and beyond space and geography in order to be united. I think that we are being so lucky in order to be participating, mobilizing against all these institutions all around the world. I think that the facts that workers of the maquilas are being able to be taking part in those mobilizations and try to do some contacts with them, and we do the follow-up. So we take tours to India. For example, one Maquiladora worker was in Mumbai, India, right now. So for them was amazed, try to learn how the people in India is raising now, how they are fighting back. And as well, when we were in Cancun, many of Korea, huge delegation from Korea was there. So now that we have this problem with LG Electronics, that is a Korean company, so we were calling our colleagues, they were mobilizing right there, they were pressuring the headquarters over there in Korea, and immediately it was obvious that they have to make pressure on the Mexican and American management in order to try to solve the problem. So I think that this global alliance is making us more strong, and we will be able to mobilize. If it's in Amsterdam with Philips, if it's in Korea with LG, if it's in Japan with Sony, if it's in all those places, all this alliance. Yes, as I told you, that this has been a process. When NAFTA was in 3 countries, we were trying to do a trinational label. When they were trying to extend NAFTA and the FTAA, so we have to be an hemispheric label, and the Coalition for Justice and the Maquiladoras was one of the organizations who were participating and funding this hemispheric social alliance, one alliance on the hemispheric label. But also, if this exploitation of the capital is moving all around the globe, we need to do it on a global level. We need to really be united in order to face them.
So if you could just give me an example of how this worked. In the LG case, you were able to get Samsung workers from Korea to pressure Samsung or Hyunsun in Korea, or did they write letters of support for the workers in
Korea,
in Mexico? How did that work?
In Korea. First, we started in contact with them, and they did research and then find out what was the union who was in Korea with that company. So then the union started to talk with that company. That company said that it's not true, they were lying. So, but because we were in touch immediately, we were sending the list of the workers who were fired, we were sending everything. So then they were with the headquarters, and they were mobilizing the workers from Korea, from Hansom, that supposed Hansom was doing all this problem here with the LG. So it was through the union with NGOs in Korea and the same company in the headquarters that they were doing demonstration, and they were first meeting and threatening to go to strike supporting these workers. And that was, for me, that's been amazing, because at least in the United States, any workers has been able to say, we will go on the strike to support that workers or to do something, okay? They can send letters, but that's it. They don't want, and I understand that it's really to say, you are asking me to put in risk my job. As the first time that I come, they say we cannot talk about solidarity because we are losing our job. So, but it's amazing, it's other contexts, it's other conditions, it's other regions, and everybody tried to help according with their possibilities.
That's great. I wonder if you could sort of reflect a bit now on where you're at, and just a few questions about that. What honor, award, or achievement that you've received are you most proud of? And you've got several, so I know this might be difficult, so it doesn't have to be one.
Yeah, well, I think that probably for some people's awards or accomplishments has other meanings. But for me, I think that when the workers were willing to help me to go to the law school and to support me during all these years, not just with money, just encouragement, because many times I was ready to give up. Try to really say, we are with you. And how we were together during all this time was really a big accomplishment for me. Not just to get to be able to go to the law school, it's also the way that we were in a collective way without planning any strategy to do anything, how strong we were at that time. And I think that the answer for that also was the big accomplishments now is every day I give thanks to have this life, but also to have this light here and this fire here, in order to have this consciousness and this love for my people. And when I was having this gift to understand that the struggle was beyond of four walls, of one country, of one people, that gift is being possible in all these people that we are being working on and involved, to empower these people, to give them the tools that now, once you give them information and they get the knowledge, immediately they move to transform and fight for. I think that that is the biggest accomplishment that can exist.
That's right. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add to what you've said?
Well, the only thing is that I just want to say that it's not about egos, it's not about heroes, it's not about one person. It's about people. It's about this war. Always I thought, I don't think that the war will be in this way. It should be something else, outside of this war, outside of this exploitation. And that dream that I used to have, that be a world with justice, that at least we be able to work, being work complement of our life, not the meaning for our life. Now that you have to live just to work without having one life. So when I've been going through all this process in my life, I've been learning so much. I'm thanking my fellow workers every day because they were teaching me so much. They were giving me strength. Marta is no Marta. Marta is millions of workers in the maquilas and millions of women in the war. And just together, we can change this system and make a better world for us.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us today.
Bow to no man's word. Only we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.